So, let me welcome to the stage a man who hammers out the truth, Reese.
Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Reese. I was actually surprised I was invited to come out here because I've never done public speaking, and I'm actually shocked right now how unnervous I am, because I was nervous leading up to this, so it won't be that bad. I'm going to keep this, it's kind of a fairly personal sort of thing I'm doing, just because my specialty is condensing stories down to 5 minutes and putting some cool music to it and stuff like that. But I have been doing the Substack for a couple years, where I do a podcast every Sunday, and I have some exclusive videos up there as well for paywall. And my podcast is just basically me sort of ranting and talking about stuff, so people seem to like it. So anyways, if you want to check out some of my stuff, go to Greg Reese's Substack. If you want to support my work, I got Space is Fake video there for the paywall, and fake moon landing, some Tartaria videos. I'm working on one on the Giants. And well, anyways, here we go. That's Substack. I'm calling it Why Would You Believe in Unproven Theory? And my whole life I've been a seeker. Seek and you will find. In many ways, I've been doing this job since I was a kid. My life definitely sort of built me for this job. When I was growing up, my family would think I was crazy for anything, you question anything of the official narrative and I would trigger them. They would get mad. Just like we all know in COVID now. When COVID happened, I realized I'm used to this. I'm used to being called crazy and stupid and an idiot. Just for questioning things. So, and I've been accused by someone of being a little too agnostic, having a bit of too of an open mind, and there is some validity to that. It makes me very good at my job because I'm able to access all information, and I don't have much of a filter bias. But I'm also all over the place. That was the criticism. The criticism was I haven't figured out the absolute truth just because it's all coming in, all this data and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily true. We'll get to that in a minute. I just read this recently. I've always been a fan of all religions, especially Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, but I'm all over the place. I like it all. I like to find the commonalities. That's what I like to find, is the commonalities. But this one I don't remember reading until recently. It says, do not believe in what you have heard. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. Do not believe in anything because it is rumored and spoken by many. Do not believe merely because a written statement of some old sage is produced. Do not believe in conjectures. Do not believe in that as truth to which you have become attached from habit. Do not believe merely the authority of your teachers and elders. After observation and analysis, when it agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and gain of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. And that's just one translation, but I thought that was pretty cool. In yoga, the Yoga Sutras, which is one of my favorite all-time scriptures, this is really the only one you need, is the Sutra 1.2. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. Basically what that means is it's quieting the mind. It's turning off the inner dialogue through breath or other practices and stilling those fluctuations. As if there's a tumultuous body of water in your mind, and what you want to do is make that a mirrored lake. The Yoga Sutra 1.6 talks about the 5 kinds of modifications. These are those modifications that we're talking about right here. They call them fluctuations here. These are just different translations of the same thing. And the 5 kinds are right knowledge, which is what we're after. Misconception, some people call it wrong knowledge. Fictitious perception, which is when we're fantasizing. Sleep, which we all know sleep, which also includes dreams. And our memories. Our memories act as filters that can keep us from seeing things clearly. So right knowledge this is the one we want. Right knowledge is acquired in three ways. There's three kinds of right knowledge. First is through direct perception. You know that the sun rises in the east because you've witnessed it, you've seen it with your own eyes. Second is through logical reasoning, inference. You wake up in the morning and it's wet outside, and so you infer that it must have rained, even though you didn't see it. It's not totally accurate, but it's pretty good information. And third is through written knowledge, through stories. And these are in order as to the best. The best is seeing it for yourself, inference is second, and third is through written knowledge. And I've heard it said before, I think it was Samael Avior of the Modern Gnostic Church said that even after all this, you still have to weigh it against your own heart and your own intuition to come up to anything remotely close to the truth. And I think that's good advice. Story. So, I've never really been into politics, and I never thought of myself as a journalist. I still don't really see myself as a journalist. I see myself as a researcher, a seeker, and a video producer. But what I have learned in the past 5 years of my job is that what journalism is it's just storytelling. That's all it is. We were talking about if you haven't seen it for yourself, then it's just a story. If it's not inference or if it's not firsthand witness, it's just a story. So a good journalist is simply retelling stories from sources that haven't been caught lying. That's it. You try to, if the source has been caught telling lies before, then you don't retell the story. And if they haven't been caught, then you can tell it. But that's it, and that's pretty flimsy. It's still all just a story. All right, here we get into the flat earth stuff. What makes a good scientific model? And we've all been hearing this repeated trance, hypnotic thing, trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. The one thing I learned the most out of flat earth is how nobody does science. Some people do. I think a lot of us do. But I've learned that some of the quote-unquote smartest, most intelligent people won't do their own science. And I would argue the definition of science is that it should be repeatable. If it's legit, you should be able to repeat the experiments and get the same results. And so if you're going to believe in something, a scientific model or a scientific theory, then you really should, in my opinion, figure it out for yourself, work it out for yourself. Otherwise, you're just believing some story that someone told you. And there's a million stories out there. So what makes a good scientific model, we'll look at the screen here, is it's based on reliable observations. That, to me, is the most important. And when you look at the heliocentric model, for example, that was the main thing for me, and I think that's all you need to focus on is there's no observable curvature. I always assumed, probably like everyone else, that it's just because it's too big of a planet, you're not going to see it. But once you work out the math, like I said, I use the Pythagorean theorem for that. I know there's other equations. I think there's much simpler equations actually to do it, but that's the one I use. And I'm no math expert. I do like it, and I've studied it, so I had to brush off the cobwebs and do some practice things to get it going. But once you get it, it's simple, and then it's fun. You can just knock it out, and you can do your own science, and then you can see for yourself. And now you're getting reliable data, scientific data, that this heliocentric model doesn't work in a lot of ways, or anything you're looking at. Next is able to explain the characteristics of the observations used to formulate it. Predictive. Able to explain phenomena that were not used to develop a model. Able to be refined when new, credible, conflicting observations arise. You could say some of these apply to the heliocentric model, for sure, but there's flaws all through it. Which I think I missed one. Might be a missing slide, maybe might be out of order, but the next question is, no, I'm sorry, I'll go on. So here's the heliocentric model that we're all familiar with. And we're told the planet Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour. And then it's also spinning around the sun, and I can't tell you how fast it is. It's a lot faster than 1,000 miles an hour.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, and then we're going this way. And that looks cool. I don't know if I ever saw this before when I believed in the heliocentric model, but it's a cool little diagram. But when you observe the stars, there's no way that model works. Because over a 26,000 year cycle, it's predictable that you can see the stars like this. You got the wobble. Of course, this is the globe model. Don't get triggered. It's just a video there. But this is predictable. This was designed on a geocentric model. I took, in 2010, I took a bunch of college courses out of curiosity, because like I said, I spent my whole life researching. Before the internet, I would go to the library. So I spent my whole life digging into things and researching, and around 2010, I was just curious as to what they're teaching people in school. So I took astronomy, I took geology, economics, and what they taught us about the stars being mapped out is that they were mapped out, I might get this wrong, it's hard to keep all the information in your head, but I think it's Ptolemy. Is it Ptolemy? Ptolemy? Yeah, and the astronomy teacher said he figured it all out on a geocentric map, and that's why he's considered insane. Like, everyone considers him insane. That's what a college professor is telling a bunch of students in astronomy class, is that Ptolemy was insane because somehow he magically came up with a model that works on a false model, right? Interesting. Here's the heliocentric model. And this is where, I know I'm not teaching anything new to anyone here, but this is all going somewhere. So the heliocentric model, once again, it doesn't add up. And for me, it's all the curvature. But there's all kinds of things. No noticeable curvature at all. And I'm not going to believe anything until I see it for myself. But the curvature is one thing I can see for myself. So that's really where I always draw the line. If I'm talking to someone who doesn't know anything about flat Earth and they want to talk to me about it, I pretty much just stick to the curvature. Because this has been disputed since the very beginning, and there's no answers for it. There's this answer, the mirage, but that's a rare answer. That's probably why they did that. They took the opportunity to do that, because it kind of, like, you know, in the human mind, it's a little sellable. But I just bought an infrared camera that can shoot very long distances. So I could plan on doing a video on that, do my own experiments. And I took it out only once, I just got it, and right the first day I was able to see 30 miles away with no loss of curvature. So is heliocentrism a good scientific model? No.
The religion.
And isn't that fascinating? Because I remember when I first started seeing flat Earth videos in 2014, before I dug into it, that was my first thought, is that surely, and I don't trust anyone. I mean, I've been betrayed at a young age. One of the things I'm good at my job is that I have trust issues. That also helps me in my job. I don't trust, I figure every organization on the planet is lying to me. I kind of figured that out when I was 12. And so that's always been a benefit. But I just assumed, even though I have these trust issues, that surely I would have heard about this. Surely I would have heard that this model doesn't work. And going through COVID, I understand more why that doesn't, humans aren't that smart. I'm sure you guys are the exception. I know I'm not. I figured out at a very young age that I'm a dummy. And most of my life I figured out I was very below average intelligence. And that was a good thing for me, because I learned to be extra vigilant and extra cautious so that I wouldn't get in trouble. Because, life is dangerous, and I'm not that clever. So, but after going through COVID, I realized I'm at least average intelligence, and that's been very enlightening to me. The past few years has been very enlightening. So Nicholas Copernicus, who introduced the heliocentric model, this is another thing that always interests me, is that I grew up being told, I don't know who, probably TV, probably teachers and stuff, that it was science, it was the great story of science, that science beat out the church with the heliocentric model. And one of the funnest things about flat Earth is if you do your own science and you do your own research, which, like I said, I think you have to, you can go to Wikipedia, and you can find out just on Wikipedia that Nicholas Copernicus was, his guardian master was his uncle, who was like a high-level bishop or something in the Catholic Church, well connected to the Jesuits. And it was the Jesuit church that introduced the heliocentric model, and the Church of England, forcing it into schools, and the scientific community challenging it. So it's exactly the opposite, and that's the official story. The official story is basically the truth, but somehow we were conditioned to hear this other story. I don't know how that, it must have been, like I said, through media and just chit-chat. Because I haven't found that documented anywhere. The Jesuits. There's a big argument in the conspiracy theorist world is like, who's doing this to us? Who's in charge of all this? Everyone says it's the Jews, or it's the Jesuits, or the Freemasons. And I did a video on this recently. I think this is part of the paranoia that comes from conspiracy theories, and I can relate to it, and I understand it. I just had someone today ask me why I put a triangle in my logo, and some of you might be wondering the same thing. I've been asked that a few times. No reason, but why would you trust me? That's what this is all about. This all comes down to a personal relationship with God and an understanding of being an individual, taking in information and discerning it for yourself. But the answer why I put a triangle in my logo is because I like geometry. I like triangles. And I thought it looked, my friend did the logo and I thought it needed something. So I popped it in there. Now, I don't know if this quote is real. I don't think I've ever found that this is provable, that the CIA director actually said this, but I don't think it matters. The quote is, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." And it doesn't matter if it's said or not. I think it's absolutely true. I think it's just a fundamental, basic control method. If you can get everyone believing a lie, then they need you for their information. It's pretty fundamental. And I think what we're seeing today, like I said, I might be too agnostic. I was watching Dave Murphy's presentation, I loved it, and I was blown away, and I pretty much agree with everything he's saying. But I still, because of the position I'm in and just my nature, I'm just always like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I really don't know what's going on. I have my theories, but and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. When you've been deceived so many times, and there's trick after trick after trick, you've been tricked on this one thing, and then you're like, oh, it's this. And then years later, you're like, oh, this is a trick too. You get to a point where, it's hard to tell. So who are they? I just saw this recently. I did a video called Who Are They? And recently, and I think someone responded on it with this, and I've never seen this before. I love an infographic. I think this is beautiful. There's some things at the bottom of this pyramid where it describes people as slaves, sheep, cattle, zombies. I think that's a little harsh, but I think that's just, whoever made this, I think they're showing their emotions about maybe how they feel in this world. But I'm not trying to be critical of it. I think it's beautiful. What I like about it is how it takes you all the way up to the higher spirit realms. But you have corporations, you have banks, and then you have all the secret societies. They did a really excellent job in here, in my opinion. And what this shows me is that we all want someone to blame. There's no one to blame. This is a system. This is God's world, in my opinion. That's my opinion. My belief in God is, if it wasn't for God, I'd be dead right now. And but I see God as something I absolutely don't understand. I think God is everything. I don't believe there's anything that exists that is outside of God. I believe God loves us all. I tend to believe we are all part of God, like Dave Murphy was saying, cells in a body. Where are we? That's a big question. That's another thing I learned about Flat Earth is it's very popular to try to figure out, well, where are we? If we're not here, then where are we? And I was actually trying to research this for a report. I was looking up psychological papers. I was wondering if maybe anyone's done a research paper on human psychology as to the need to have an answer. Because that does seem to be the case. There seems to be this need to have an answer. And what I say all the time is, and maybe it's because, like I said, I've been betrayed at a young age, so I got over that at a young age. And so every time I find out I've been deceived, I'm almost filled with a sense of joy. I would equate it to like how a child is just grabbing everything around them. They don't know what anything is, and their eyes are wide open, and they're just thrilled to be here. And that's kind of where I'm at. So when I went through the flat earth thing, it took me about 2 weeks to get through all the research. And I was like, I remember at the time I was living in a yoga ashram, and I was actually living alone in a temple, and 2 miles away from everyone else. And the temple was a dome. The temple was almost like the dome model of the earth, of the flat earth, in almost every way. And I'm sure it was probably built like that. It was built by an Indian Swami, and it was built similar to the models that we'll see, that you've all seen before, and you'll see. And I remember just sitting outside under the stars. I'm sure you can relate to this. Like, before you look at the stars and you would imagine this spinning ball. And then you change the paradigm, and then you look at the stars and you see the stars moving around you. And it all just sort of becomes clear that, yeah, we're on this stationary thing. And it doesn't feel like you're moving. So I would just go out there every night for weeks and just in awe. Like a little kid, like I was a grown adult, so I wasn't crawling around, slobbering on things, but I was just sitting there in awe. Wow. Because I'm like, I don't know where I am. And to me, that's kind of fantastic. A lot of people say that this is the model, that there's land being hidden from us. And I think it's very interesting. This is a tracing of a map, allegedly. I think the story is it's about 100 years old, and a British guy was in a Buddhist monastery and saw this map, and he traced it and brought it back. Okay, maybe. It's interesting. Some people think that we are in a simulation. And I think, that's probably true. I think when you look at how everything's light and waves, and you look at the actual nature of reality and quantum science and all that, yeah, in a sense it is a simulation. And almost all Holy Scripture basically kind of alludes to that in its own way. But what does that mean? Does that mean that we're actually in a computer program? I think that's probably because that's what we understand, and it's giving us this understanding. Maybe. I don't know. You've all seen this before. Ancient cultures. This is probably where I went to first, actually, when I started. Because, I want to know too. I always want to know the truth. I'm always looking for the truth. So is this the model? This makes a lot of sense. The fact that you had all these people all over the world agreeing very specifically here. This is how the Bible describes it. I think this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. The first rabbit hole I ever went down was the aliens. Before I ever got red pilled, that was like the first thing. And that's a must, in my opinion. And that's probably the biggest rabbit hole, because there's so much disinfo in the alien thing, more than any other thing. And that tells me that they really don't want you to know what's going on there. And when I got around flat Earth, I had no problem shifting my thoughts to that this is where these aliens are, down here in the underworld. I have no problem with that. In fact, it just makes a lot more sense to me. When you look at all the information and put it all together, I'm okay with that. The sun and the moon. That's how it looks to me. It looks like they're close up here. They look like the same size. It makes sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense to me, obviously, is what the hell are they? And what is keeping them up there? I was just talking to someone today. If I were to guess, I would guess you could probably tap into that energy that's holding them up there. And maybe that's what Tesla was doing, or these, now they're talking about this antiquitech. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't know. And I'm not going to put my faith in any theory until I know for myself. Or maybe someday I'll get over the absolute agnosticism and pick one, who knows. This is what the secret societies claim to believe. The secret societies, the Freemasons, Blavatsky, a lot of the occult believe, they call it Hollow Earth, they call it actually Agartha, Shambhala. And they call it the Hollow Earth, but the nature of the occult, everything's in symbols and everything's in code. And people will argue over Hollow Earth and this Earth, but what's the difference? I don't honestly see any difference. That's hollow down there. That's a hollow Earth. So we get caught up in semantics and words and stuff like that, and this knowledge is all very, in my opinion, cryptic and coded for a reason. But this is, I just interviewed a guy, a very interesting story, who infiltrated the Freemasons and got all the way up to the third, this is hearsay, this is just a story I heard. But he claimed to have gotten all the way up to the 33rd degree and met some Freemasons that knew that he was lying and knew that he was infiltrated. He said they were the good guy Freemasons. And they told him that, this is what they told him, that they believe that the rulers of the earth are non-humans. They say that according to these Freemasons, they believe that the Great White Brotherhood, Satnam Kumar, something like that, Kumari, and they are living in the underworld in Agartha, in Shambhala, and they're the rulers over Earth, and that's who they worship. Once again, I don't know, I don't believe that. And if this guy was telling me the truth, how am I to believe that these other people were telling him? I mean, that's heard it from a person who heard it from a person, you know? But it's interesting, and it does check out with occult knowledge, the Hollow Earth and the Agartha. But more interesting, if you dig into occult knowledge, they tell you that we're here. This is obviously very symbolic. But they tell you that we are inside of an egg. Inside of an egg. A sphere. This is a more common picture for it. The snake is very interesting because Gods of Eden by William Brantley, if you haven't read that book, that's one of my all-time favorite books. But he refers to this secret society bloodline as the Brotherhood of the Snake, simply because of the symbology, because of the serpent symbology that goes all the way back. Dave Murphy was talking about serpents and ladders. I thought that was pretty funny. This is the tree of life. This is, right there you see the biblical model. It's a little blurry. And you're going to see a phase into Malkuth. Malkuth is the bottom Sephiroth. Sephiroth means sphere in the tree of life. Kabbalah teaching is very interesting to me. It's very intense. Too intense for me. I couldn't get that deep in it. It's very mathematical. It's very complex. It's pretty heavy duty. Which is why when they describe this as being both the solar system we live in and the human body, well, I learned this before I got into Flat Earth. They said it's both the solar system we live in and the human body. And I was very confused by that because it was the first time I studied anything in Kabbalah that didn't really make sense and didn't add up. I see the human body, you got the head, you got the arms, you got all that, and it all matches up to the human body, all of it, the chakras. But I was like, that's not the solar system we live in. But maybe it is, because according to the occultists, not all, but according to a few occultists I've studied, I think the one that comes to mind is Dion Fortune from the 19th century. She says that we are living in Malkuth, right there at the bottom, and it's in a fallen state. And this is all a natural part of God's kingdom. This is according to the research. And that Malkuth drops down into this fallen state, into the third density. And it is our job together as humans to lift Malkuth back up, to ascend back up, and then rise up, ultimately going back to source. And this is a story, a very common story actually. I mean, this is basically Hinduist philosophy. And according to Dion Fortune, you can spiritually ascend on your own from Malkuth and ascend up. I don't exactly understand how. But this also adds up to the solar system we live in if you think about that Bible model with the dome and the heavens above, because that's what's up here. The heavens are above. These are the planets. These are all the planets that we see. And that's kind of what we see when you look up. When you look up, like I said, we all know this, it's not going around us. It's kind of doing this. It's just kind of wobbling a little bit. That's another question. What's the wobble?
Chandler's wobble?
What's that?
Chandler's wobble?
The wobble of the planet for the precession of the equinoxes.
Oh.
Like the globe model, they see what it is, and they can't even explain though why it's doing that. I think in astronomy class, I think they said there was a collision with the asteroid belt, and that knocked us on a wobble. But
Yeah, it's called channel.
But in the geocentric model, what is that? It just seems like the stars are doing it, right?
Right. Channel's level.
So, I mean, this is where I go to all the time. Why would you believe in an unproven theory? If I were to guess, if you had me at gunpoint and you said, you have to tell me what it is, where are we? I would, I'm very reluctant to do it, but I would say, I probably guess that this is what it is. And this is just a symbol of it, obviously, but I don't know. So where are we? I don't know where we are, and I find that to be unbelievably magical. Who are we, I think, is a better question. And this is where I'm getting to what I believe in. All that stuff I just showed you, maybe. I definitely don't believe in the heliocentric model. And I don't, I mean, all you have to do is the math and work it out, and you realize it's all bunk. But a more productive question, I believe, is who am I? There's actually a popular yogic meditation. There's all kinds of practices in yoga to how to come to this conclusion. I mostly did it through the breath. That's how I did it, just by slowing my breath down, stilling the water, and in that peace, you can commune with God, in my opinion. But there is a practice of doing it for the intellectuals that they teach. If you have a very active mind and you just can't turn it off, just ask yourself this question. And you don't even have to, they teach it like you don't have to even breathe or close your eyes, or you can just pace around. Who am I? If you have that type of mindset. And you just break it down mathematically and scientifically. Am I the body? Am I this thing? That's made up of, like once again, Dave Murphy, I always really enjoyed his things. I've referred to him several times. He's talking about the cells in each body. Like each cell is a living thing. Each cell can eat, it poops, it breathes. They have communities, they have families. They have fight or flight response. They're all like little people. And our bodies are made up of billions of them. And then when we die, our body disintegrates and turns into other things. So are we that? Is that who we are? It's a very good question to ask, I think. I've been talking a lot about the most recent information I've been absorbing is the raw material, the law of one. I just read it recently. And I've been chatting to people about it, and I chatted to a few people here about it, and they were like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's channeled material, and I'm always very skeptical of channeled material. Once again, that's, who knows if that's true. But it was done very scientifically. It was done, I'm very impressed with the way it was done. It took them like 20 years to accomplish the channel. And according to the channel, they were channeling a community of beings in the 6th density, and they call themselves Ra, but it's a collective because they say we're all one. So this idea of separate people doesn't exist, that's all an illusion. And they claim to be the same Ra of Egypt. According to this raw material, they say they are on the path of service to others, and they're here to help humanity rise up that fallen state and ascend. And they say that in 3rd density, we are given human bodies because our human bodies are fragile and they experience pain. And this whole 3rd dimension area is all about pain and suffering for many reasons. One reason is our fragility forces us into communities, forces us into a social setting because we need each other. And according to the raw material, through that social setting, we learn how to live with each other. And we learn that ultimately we're to learn that we're all one, love one another, respect one another. And that's the 3rd density, and that equates to right here. Pain and suffering. The good news, who knows if it's true, but according to them, and this jives with a lot of other sources too, according to them, this is, out of this process of growth, of spiritual growth, this is the hell. This is the only one where there's pain and suffering, and that's because that's the whole point. The whole point is to learn to love each other, and it's the school of hard knocks. And what we're learning is to get up here, to the heart chakra, or to the 4th density, which is love. And once again, by many accounts, many sources, they've said that we're stuck here. And it's because we're having a hard time getting along. We just keep fighting each other. And a lot of us are evolving. I lived in Japan for 6 months when I was young. Favorite place I've ever been to. The Japanese people know how to get along. I've talked to my Japanese friends about it, and they tell me that's just the way they're raised. They're just raised, unless you're with close friends, you don't express your opinion in public, because that's kind of like starting a fight. In esoteric law, that's the same thing. In esoteric law, it teaches to remain honorable in a court of law, and being honorable means you have to phrase everything in a question, and you don't make a statement. Because making a statement is like drawing your sword. There was peace, and now you've made your statement, and there's no peace. Because now the person you made that statement to is now, therefore, you put them on the spot to either submit or to fight back. Which I find very interesting. So, things like that. And that's one thing in America that we seem to have a big problem with, is a lot of Americans seem to think that everyone needs to hear my opinion. So we're learning love, in my opinion. This book, I can only speak a little bit about. I just started reading this on my trip out here, and I love it already, and I can't wait to get back to it. But this is new science, and there's other sources of this too. It's too far away to getting anywhere near mainstream because it completely challenges the mainstream story, and you all know how that is. I'm not going to have a lot of luck with it. But what they're finding is that the heart is not a pump. And that the blood circulates not through a pump, but through a fourth state of water. Structured water is what you can call it. There's other names for it. And there's the water in your body organically, miraculously, just forms a structured water wall along all your arteries and veins, which creates an electrical current, for lack of a better word, which actually moves the blood through your system, this electrical current. And in order to keep that system going to where your body properly creates this structured water that you need to operate like this, you need sunlight, human touch, and the reason you need human touch is the radiation of a living creature, and love. Pretty beautiful stuff, right? I don't have the slide here, but you guys are probably familiar with the water crystals in Motel. You put the label of love on it, you put the label of hate on it, and the water will actually change form, change its structure. So you can structure your water by just saying, I love you. That's one of my favorite things to say. There's mantras, and years ago I chose the I love you mantra. I recommend it. It'll keep you smiling. What does that mean, love? In my opinion, did someone say something? Sorry. I thought I asked a couple of questions there. I've been asking myself that question my whole life. It's my favorite word, love. I haven't had a whole lot of luck in romantic love. And so I was always wondering, what is it? In my elder wisdom, I think love simply means, it's hard to describe it. But I would say, for lack of better words, it's wanting. If I love this, I want this thing to be all it can be. I want it to be its fullest. I want it to be unmolested, not trespassed on. I want it to experience its fullness. There's a word called mangalam, Sanskrit, one of my favorite chants. And that's a word that's hard to define as well, but that's kind of what love is to me. Mangalam, if I say mangalam to you, I'll say right now, mangalam to all of you. That means I want you all to be at your fullest. I want you to realize yourself, your full potential, your full purpose. Well, I rushed through it a bit, so now I can just rant for a little bit, because I think this is the end. So we're all one, and that's what I think this whole thing is. That's where I'm at. I've been through the paranoia. I've been through the suspicion. Who's in on it? I'm at the point now, I don't know if you've seen it. One of my new favorite channels on YouTube is Decode Your Reality. And it's a guy who will take a person, he'll take a TV show, take a movie, take an album, whatever, and break it down using Chaldean numerology, astrology, the golden ratio, prime numbers, And he keeps coming up with the exact same results over and over and over and over and over. And if you have the head for it, you start seeing it. You start seeing that there's a code. It's like we're all being played. I used to years ago I would pray to God, I would ask God, make me an instrument. And that's kind of, to me, the purpose of quieting the mind and knowing who you are and understanding our true power is because if you can heal, if you can treat your body right, if you can love yourself, if you can be your fullest, if you can quiet the mind, and then God will play you like an instrument. Well, that's basically it, folks. The whole point of this was, like I said, my thing is sitting behind a desk, ripping my hair out doing research, and then staring at the computer screen for hours trying to figure out how to turn 5 pages into 1. And then finally get into the fun part where I produce videos. But I do this all alone in a small apartment and everything like that. So this is the first time I've ever really been. I used to play in bands when I was younger, but I would have long hair and I would shy. I'm kind of a shy guy.
Shoegazer.
I'm a shoegazer. I was a shoegazer. So I'm actually pretty happy how loud and nervous I am right now. But so I figured I'd just kind of keep this personal, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say. And really, all I wanted to say is, from the bottom of my heart, I believe truly that we are all one, and I love all of you, and I really hope that you all have the greatest time here while you're alive. So, thank you.